morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Serial Optimist podcast. I am very excited for our guest today. We have Miss Kendall over here from Riverside Community Manager over at Riverside. So, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get to talk with you.
Yes, absolutely. So, Kendall, why don't you talk about your role at Riverside and what Riverside is, and just give a little bit of a landscape for the audience?
Yeah, so my role at Riverside, I'm the community manager. And so basically what that means is it's under marketing, but my role here is part customer service, part marketing, part product. I am leading and supporting and kind of being the cheerleader for the thousands of creators who are using Riverside. And so anyone who doesn't know Riverside, we're a remote recording and editing platform where you can record in high quality and edit, kind of take your content from end to end before you publish it on social media or on YouTube, wherever you want to put it. And yeah, so a lot of my role is meeting directly with users, hearing about what they're working on, hearing what their goals are, and just kind of helping empower them as they get through their content creation process, especially because it's a remote recording platform. So a lot of people are kind of going at it alone, or maybe they're on a marketing team and they're the person that is kind of doing this end to end. So it's nice to be able to feel connected to somebody while you're creating.
No, 100%. Excuse me. As a user of Riverside, that was my biggest concern was, and I think a lot of people when they start a podcast, especially me, I want to start one 5 years ago, and I wish I started it way sooner because I was overwhelmed with all the different platforms and where you edit sometimes isn't in the actual platform. You edit outside and then you pull it in. And it was just like a lot of moving pieces where Riverside, you do everything inside of it, where we literally record here in Riverside. My editor and producer comes in after, then edits the video, makes it into shorts via Riverside as well. So, and then there's the
Yeah.
transcript that we can also use that also allows us to make social media posts with it. So it just was like an all encompassing platform and just made the most sense for us. And I think for anyone looking to start a podcast, it's 100% the best application that I'd recommend for anyone to use.
Yeah, no, I mean I'm biased, but I totally agree. And something that we're something that we're even seeing more of is even if it's not a podcast, like people are using it in marketing to collect testimonials from people that they're working with. People are using it like an hour session with your CEO and then creating content from that. So to kind of give like more of a face and like to humanize your brand. So there are a lot of different ways that you can take it, and I think that hearing about those use cases from the community is just really interesting. But it's nice to
Well,
hear that you're doing it from end to end because that's always the goal.
yeah, no, we just found it to be easier to use it from end to end because we own a marketing agency, Happy Brands Co. And for us, we're always using different platforms and we're recording in different areas. And we really, for us, it's all about efficiency, but also quality and making sure that we're being efficient. We're doing what we can to get stuff in and out pretty quickly for our clients, but we also
Mhm.
need to make sure it's high quality. And so that was the same thing for our podcast. I'm like, I don't want my team spending hours and hours and hours trying to do like all these different, platforms to move everything in when we could just be in one place and it's just easier to manage. But I agree with you on the testimonial side. I mean, so many people use applications like, the Zooms and Google Meets, which are great for, interfacing with your team. But we have just found it wasn't the best. It was what it was. It is what it is. It's like you're meeting to meet, where in Riverside, you could do that to have a conversation, but now you can record it. And now you can also splice it up into little shorts for social media and you can use it multidimensionally versus just recording it and sharing it back with the team and then putting it in other platforms to make it social media friendly. Which,
Yeah.
if we do anything right now, everything has to be social media friendly.
Exactly. And everything, what social media friendly means now, a lot of is video first. I mean, even LinkedIn right now, I think, is trying to go video first. So it's
Yes.
a super interesting time to be in it. Even if you don't consider yourself like a content creator, it's never been easier to create content and kind of get your self in the game, I guess I would say.
Absolutely. So now with that being said, what do you think the future of podcasting is? Because one big thought and one thing I hear so much on the internet is everyone has a podcast. Everyone's creating a podcast, but what do you think is the future of podcasting? Because to me, it's like everyone should have a podcast. It's a platform to discuss, and you don't know what can come from it. I've received business deals from it. I've had different opportunities come up in conversations that wouldn't have happened without this type of platform. But I'd be interested to hear from your perspective. What do you think the future of podcasting really looks like?
Yeah, so future of podcasting. I think that, and I'm not just saying this because I'm at Riverside, I think the future of podcasting is that people are going to start thinking of it more as audio and video. I think obviously traditionally, a lot of people are listening to podcasts in their headphones on the go, but I think that we're even seeing Spotify, we're seeing Spotify push video for podcasts, and we're simultaneously seeing YouTube, which is traditionally video, pushing podcasts. So, kind of like where those meet is that when you're recording your podcast, I think that it's really important to have a video element. That being said, I think that that's pretty overwhelming for people to say, oh my gosh, now I have to do a video element. That's crazy. It's like so much work to do that. One, it's not that much work, especially if you're recording with Riverside. You can already just have that video element with your podcast and you can record audio and video. Maybe you're putting your full episode out in audio, which is great. But then at least you have these kind of video clips to put on the internet, to put on social media, to kind of help people discover the content that you're creating. So it doesn't have to be difficult in the way of like, oh my gosh, I now have to edit an hour's worth of content. If you start in smaller steps, like, oh my gosh, now I have to create a social clip from this, like kind of start opening that door to video. So I would say that is number one. And I think that beyond that, I think that more and more businesses are using podcasts as a kind of as part of their funnel, as part of their marketing strategy. So for example, we also, Riverside, you could also go live. So a lot of the time we'll do webinars, and webinars are great. It's a great way to show faces behind your brand, have conversations, engage with people in the comments. But what people are also finding is that you can use a podcast and tell a story as a brand. Maybe, and it doesn't even like, I'm not talking about having a podcast about your brand. Like I'm talking about it can be people that you've worked with and just having conversations. It can be kind of tangentially if you're a real estate company, maybe you talk about trends in the real estate industry. There's the word. You can have like and show that that's kind of as thought leadership, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you can, and then you can use that and drive the rest of your content for the rest of the month. So I can record an hour-long conversation and then I can take that transcript and I can put it into ChatGPT or another AI platform and ask it to create a newsletter for me. Ask to create 5 different social posts. There are so many different things. Maybe you want to create a blog out of it. So there are different ways that businesses are using podcasting as kind of like the top of their content pyramid or the bottom of their content pyramid. Is it top or bottom? They're using it as an important part of their content pyramid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, those 2 points are exactly why I started my podcast because
Hmm.
I was someone who was I'm not starting it unless I can make it into video because now I can cross promote this across many platforms. And the 2 platforms you mentioned, I publish on Spotify and they now allow video, which is great. And then we have a YouTube channel that has been growing. And so for us, it was a non-negotiable to be able to have something that has high video quality, which Riverside does, and the capability to offer that than just voice. But there, I think that's the biggest intimidation. Most people are like, I don't want to be on camera. I don't know if I'm ready. Like I think we all have these our own feelings of insecurity. And I'm like, oh, right now I'm not wearing makeup. And I'm like, I don't give 2 shits. I'm like, I used to so much. And now I'm in a place in my life where things just, that stuff doesn't really matter. It's really about the messaging and about the conversation more than anything. And 90% of people are probably going to be listening to us versus watching it. But at the end
Yeah.
of the day, I want them to consume it.
But that's kind of the beauty of podcasting, right? So like
True.
that you like people want to feel like they're sitting in your living room with you. You know,
Yeah.
like it's I think that that's also why it's such a powerful thing for businesses is because people want to do business with people less than they want to do business with a brand or a company. So the
Hmm.
more that you can just kind of humanize yourself, I think that is better. And also podcasting is just such a great way to do that. And so the more authentic that you show up to it, kind of the more that you'll get out of it.
I Authenticity is number one, and that was to my point number two of I own a, marketing agency, and so for us, we were like, okay, how are we going to build additional funnels into the new year? We have our traditional ones. We, do a lot of our networking and our cold calling and our outreach, like traditional businesses. But I was like, I want to be able to reach people in a different way that also isn't like the traditional sales method. It's like we're educating, we're talking about our story and our brand and our business. So people from the authentic side get to see like who we are as a company and like who I am as a person and my own personality. And then that is going to usually tie like, oh, I want to do business with someone like that. And because I've felt like that when I watch a podcast or I listen to a podcast and they're talking about their life and their business and how it kind of all comes together in segments. And I'm like, I want to do business with someone like that. And so,
Yeah.
um, and when I was on an episode of a podcast a year ago, and I ended up getting one of my largest clients from that because they heard my topic I was discussing. They were like, "Hey, can we meet for coffee? I'm just interested in like learning more about what you talked about." And then here we are, they're one of my largest clients. And so I think there's just such an opportunity for businesses to get themselves out there in a more new age way.
Exactly. And also you can use it like kind of as SEO. So if there's something
Yeah.
big that's happening in your industry, there's no better way to jump into the conversation by creating a podcast episode about that because sometimes people are searching just for that topic and then to be able to kind of get your voice in there in that conversation is just a really powerful way to get yourself in front of people who really care about that topic that they're searching for. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a smart way to connect with people in a new way.
Well, and I think to your point too that you touched upon is being a thought leader. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is thought leadership is really being an expert in your field. And it's being able to be someone that you can go to as sound, advice or specialty within that. So let's just say you're a plumber and you are someone who works on plumbing all day in commercial or residential, you might know something that's happening or changing with code enforcement and housing. That is something that you would talk about on a podcast. And I give this as an example because that sounds kind of maybe silly to some people. Like, why would a plumber have a podcast? But like, why wouldn't they? Because now they're a thought leader. And how fun is that? Like, that doesn't have, you don't have to be a marketing agency or in marketing to just have a podcast. You can be any business.
Or even like I'm thinking a cool idea could be like plumbing horror stories, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
crazy stories around plumbing. And so then you're kind of proving why you need a good plumber because like here are crazy stories that involve plumbing in some way and like a disaster happening, you know?
Yeah.
So that could
I love
also be
those
like a
stories.
cool way. Yeah, so it could like there are different ways that you can look at different topics. There is a business podcast from a brand. What's that brand that's like in cars that you can press if there's an emergency?
Oh, OnStar?
Stars OnStar,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So OnStar had a podcast or has a podcast, and the whole storyline is basically like scary stories that happened in and around cars.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's like a true crime kind of vibe, at the same time proves the worth of the product because like, wow, I wish I had OnStar in case of something like that
Yeah,
happened. So
you're
it's
inadvertently selling.
exactly. And it's a really cool way of doing that. So there are really fun different ways that you can become that thought leader that are different than you might realize when you're thinking like about your first idea of what your podcast would be.
I agree. And I think I this was something I suffered with where I was like, I feel like I have to just talk about marketing because that's what I'm in. But most people are multidimensional. Like where I'm a real estate investor. I am about to be a first-time mom. I, started my own business as a marketing agency, but I have a decade of experience in corporate America. So I have a lot of different industries I've been in and experienced. And then, I've moved states multiple times. Like you have all these different things a part of you that build you as who you are as a person that I think we're always afraid to just be, not say messy, but kind of like, we are who we are. And this is all the different pieces I can talk about versus like, I have to just talk about this. But in reality, you're more relatable because most people aren't just an expert in one thing. They have all these
Mhm.
other pieces to them.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, speaking of that, I will say, I will just plug that I am also a new mom. My daughter just turned 3 this month, or three
oh,
months this today, 3 months today.
congratulations.
Thank you. So if you need any advice, I'm definitely not an expert in this field, but I'm an expert in trying to figure it out as you go. So I'm here for you. And I'll
Thank
also say that,
you.
like, yeah, of course. And I'll also say that, like, as far as humanizing and marketing and things like that, I think that that's something that really drew me to community management because that was just a way that, like, I think that there's one thing to be said for influencer marketing and the fact that, like, you could see somebody that you really look up to in a field doing something incredible and you want to know, what are they using, what are they doing. And I think it's also really powerful to call up a friend and say, I know you have a podcast, like, what are you recording on, like,
Yeah.
building these communities, tapping into different communities is also this very cool new way of marketing and kind of
Yeah.
like leveraging the power of that.
No, absolutely. And that was literally the first thing when I was looking to start my podcast is I reached out to like 20 people and I was like, what do you use for podcasting? What do you recommend? And I did get like a pretty good skew of options. And it's funny, Riverside's really good at advertising because I kept popping up on my thing as like, you should try Riverside, you should try Riverside. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna try it. And
You know what?
I
I
like
should try Riverside.
I know. I was looking at the interface, and the interface looked really. Your developers have done a really good job on like the outward facing. It's very user friendly. It's really clean and easy to use. And that for me was something that I was intimidated by it. And while I'm pretty tech savvy, I want something that's relatively easy to jump into. And so I started using it and I just talked to my production and my team and I was like, we can't ever do that. And also now I've had multiple people ask me what I use now because I keep on my podcast and everyone's like, what do you use? What do you use? I'm like, Riverside. I will recommend anything other than Riverside. It's been the easiest. And it was the one thing that I had, it was really funny, is it flagged in my banking because you guys are out of New Zealand. And so my banking, I'm in the US, in New York, and they're like, is this fraud? And I'm like, no, I just am using a
No, it's
European, like
essential.
outside company. But it's been amazing. And it's really funny when you're talking about the OnStar thing. I have to go back to that for like
Yep.
the true crime is so popular right now. And people love hearing those details. And my podcast is called The Serial Optimist. So I show up under true crime because everyone thinks it's like serial murderer or something. And so all
That's
my
some
friends
really
are like,
great
they're like, you
sneaking
are
into a different
listed
time.
under some really suspect things in the serial area. And I was like, perfect.
Actually, Serial was the first podcast that I ever listened to. I remember I was like taking a mega bus from DC to New York, just like listening
Mhm.
to it. And sometimes when I'm listening to true crime, it's funny. I'll like be in a bus or like somewhere public, and I'm like, if only anyone could hear what's happening in my headphones right now. It's like I'm
Yeah.
walking on the street, and then somebody's like, they found their body, and I'm like, it's really, I'm like, if anyone could hear what's going on in my headphones right now, they would be freaked out. Anyway, yeah. So it's just like what I think is really exciting, like hearing what you're saying. Like I think that I have a really cool role within Riverside because I get to hear, like, we have our developers that are working on the platform. We have product to meet with users all of the time. But it's really cool as community manager to get to meet every day with people that are using the product and talk about how much they love it or how much it's kind of impacted their lives in a way, because what we're doing is really personal, like
Yeah.
podcasting is really personal. So to hear every day stories about people, like, you helped me find, like, this helped me find my voice, or I've been really loving this journey, it's just like there's nothing more motivating for your day to day than to get to do that.
Yeah. Well, of course. And I think anyone wants to be able to go in and be like bought into their own product that they're selling or that they're a part of in some way. And I think that was, it's something that I wasn't expecting. I've always been pretty extroverted, but people do that by knowing me in person. But I really didn't have this like platform to have my own storytelling kind of time. And so I'm just thankful that there's a platform where like you don't realize when you start podcasting what you're going to get out of it. And for me, it was almost like having a safe space to be my most authentic self and to show up in a different way than just writing a post. Because writing a post now and like writing copy, I do that for my a lot of my own personal social. I do that for all my own personal social. But I think a lot of people now think like, is it ChatGPT? Is that actually her voice? I own an agency. Is she using someone else to write this? While we leverage that in a lot of different ways, you can't fake it on podcasts because this is who I am. This is like, there's no one else here but me and then my guests. And so I think it's just allowed me to show up in a very different way than I ever expected.
No, it's really it's like it's cool to hear you say that it's a safe space because I think that what intimidates people is putting themselves out there in such a way on the internet, like in the way of having somebody like listen to you for an hour, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, however long your podcast is. And so it's cool to hear that you say that because I think that's what that holds a lot of people back. It's like, what am I going to say? What's my show going to say? And then like I think that when people go to podcasts, especially when it's around their business or marketing or anything like that, they want to kind of be polished. And when you're writing content, you can delete. I mean, you can do that in editing, but like it's different. You can delete. You can okay, what's my messaging? I'm going to write it out beautifully and clearly. But then when you're having a conversation, it's different. And I think it's more impactful to have a conversation around it. But it's great to hear you say that it's a safe space because it's I think that's what's intimidating for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, 100%. And that was I remember coming at my first podcast episode and I was so nervous because I was like, who's going to listen to my voice? Who's going to listen to me? Because we all hate listening, like re-listening to how we talk on anything. And so I was very hesitant and I was like, but it's funny because I have been wanting to start a podcast for about 5 years now and or like 4 or 5 years. And then I had hired a new girl on our team. She's young. She's like 18, 19 years old. And she's like a go-getter. She's excited. She loves marketing and creation. And she's incredible. And I just like spitballed to her one time. I was like, oh, like I'd love to start a podcast. She's like, you totally should. I will help produce it. I'll edit. I'll do whatever. And she like lit a fire in me again. And I was like, all right, all right, all right. Like someone else is plotting with you. It's like I have a team. Because I think a lot of people, and this is the hard part, where like you do it on your own generally, and you're like in it on the whole step of the way alone. But I think from your standpoint, you have resources within Riverside that make you don't feel so alone when you're producing this and figuring out like what, questions that you have or concerns. And I was fortunate that I had a team member, Maddie, shout out to her, incredible. And she really gave me the confidence to just go in and all in. And then that was literally in, I think, like October. And then we came out with my first episode the next month after that and we just went all
Nice.
in. And now we have like a full plan through May of like all of our content.
I was gonna say, so if for anyone who doesn't have that Maddie to kind of push them and make them feel excited about the idea, a recommendation that I have is like if you have an idea for a podcast you want to do, take a piece of paper and write out 10 episodes. Just like brainstorm 10 different episodes. And like what that does is that creates excitement for you. Like, oh my God, this is such a great idea. I would love to talk about this. This is a guest I'd love to have on for this topic. Like you can take you can take that as your motivation because once it's scary to start an entire new content track, I guess I would call it. Like to start podcasting, I think that it can be a little bit scary. But so when you take it step by step. Just write out a few ideas, just write out a few episodes, just think of a few people that you'd want to have on it. Those kinds of things can motivate you. And before you know it, you have the outline for a really incredible podcast that you're excited about. And I'll just do a plug that if you go on riverside.fm/community, we have a bunch of checklists there written by people in our community. And basically, what those checklists are is that they have different they're different checklists that you can use to launch your podcast. So it gives you ideas. Write out 10 episodes. Choose the camera that you want, like all of that kind of thing. And then you can go by it step by step and start creating your plan in a really manageable way.
I thank you for putting that plug in because I think there's a lot that I was fortunate that I had a team member that kind of just went in and she did a lot of research for me and kind of built it. But I think there's a lot of people that won't have that. But that's because I own an agency and that's what we do all day. Is
Yeah.
research on marketing and research on different products. But I think that's fantastic for someone who's never done that, maybe a little scared, intimidated. That's a great resource. That kind of segues into my next question for you, and I would love to get your perspective and even Riverside's like how you guys are going to evolve as a company. Where do you guys stand in your perspective and maybe as a company as like monetizing podcasts? Because I think that is also something that a lot of people are talking about right now. Not that it's the like, I'm gonna start a podcast to be a millionaire, but they look at like Call Her Daddy and they look at all these big
Hmm.
podcasts who are gonna have $80 million deals. Like, I want to do that. And I think there's so much more that goes into it that people realize, but I would be interested to hear your perspective on monetization on a podcast.
So I think that it's like it's challenging if you're trying to become one of these famous podcasters. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
completely not doable, but I would say that if you want to go into podcasting, I wouldn't do it to become famous.
Yeah.
Like I think you could become famous in your circle. But I think that there are a few things that you can do. One of them is that I think that you, when we're talking about thought leadership, that you can position yourself as a leader in your space. And
Mhm.
by doing that, like leverage your own social media platforms to show yourself as this leader. I have a podcast, I talk about this, I make all of this content. And so if you're trying to like make money from what you're doing, I think then you can prove yourself to other brands. So for example, we as Riverside partner with creators who talk about podcasting, who talk about audio editing, video editing, and we find these people because they've created their own following based on the content that they're creating. So
Yeah.
the best way is like get yourself in front of brands if you want to do that.
Mhm.
That's for like if you're trying to be a thought leader in a certain space. Otherwise, I think that there are really interesting ways that people are monetizing in different ways. So for example, I know I talked with a user who has a cooking podcast, and he basically talks with different chefs about the background of the dishes that they created that have become well known. And so the people that listen to his podcasts are cooking enthusiasts, obviously.
Yeah.
So he's created two different and very specific kind of merch to give away. So one is he teamed up with a knife company, a knife seller that made a special set for him that's like a starter kit. So he
Mm.
sells it through his website and it's branded like it comes in a case that's branded. He also has a kind of a spice kit full of different spices that he thinks are essential for every kitchen. So creating those kinds of merch those are like physical merchandise. It can be if you want to do it as far as like a digital online product. You can talk about something like, for example, I'm on this podcast, I'm talking about starting a podcast. I have an A to Z kit on how to create your podcast. You can download it at this link, it'll be in the show notes. And when you go to it, it could be gated for a few dollars. That kind of like pushing different products, that can be a way that you can do it. You can also, I mean, people are doing like live shows or things like that. There's a buy me a coffee or Patreon. Some people are actually doing their audio podcasts and making it so that you want to see the video. So they'll be
Yeah.
like, I don't know if you could see my face right now, but like they'll make kind of teases to the video, but the video is only for subscribers to their Patreon or Supercast.
Smart.
Yeah, so you can kind of like gate your video, or you could give bonus episodes in Patreon or Supercast. So there's different ways that you could monetize. I'm not going to say like this is how you get an $80 million deal, but
Yeah.
there are different ways that you can make it more manageable for you that it ends up that you can make some money off of it, like affiliate programs, like merchandise, like subscription plans. And actually, I will also say that on riverside.fm/community, we do have a monetization checklist that a creator put in. That's like I think it's 14 different ways that you can try to monetize.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, so that's somewhere that you can go to kind of just give you some ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. We never started the podcast to make money. I mean, it was like I said, a way to be a thought leader in our industry. It was like a platform for us to just have a space to be the most authentic, version of me and who I am as the founder of my company, but also um, really to tell business owner stories. Like I think there's something to be said by so many people I've been inspired by locally around here in upstate New York that are incredible business owners that just they don't have the opportunity or they haven't seen it or they, haven't been on a podcast to share their story. And for me, and more than anything, it's to share the inspiration of someone who has worked, really hard over 10, 20, 30 years and how they've accumulated this incredible business and brand. And I think it's really like the storytelling that got me super interested in starting a podcast, but it's always
Yeah.
nice to see like other options of how you make money, but I'm not really in it to do that. I think I know so many people who are, so many creators. I think that's the big topic. You go online, it's like, I want to have 1 million followers on Instagram because I can get brand deals. And I think there's a little bit of misleading information online of how hard that actually is to get that and
Hmm. Yeah.
what that actually entails. And if you go into anything just trying to make money, generally speaking, you won't be successful. You want to go in with it with a passion, with an interest, thought
Exactly.
leadership. This is what you do all day, and then the money will naturally come in some form.
Exactly. I was actually talking the other day with a coworker about the fact that like people have to put out content that's like actually valuable, and you
Yeah,
only can put out that if you're really like passionate or really care about that subject. So we were talking about actually this will relate to what we were talking about before. That I was saying that I can't tell you how many like ridiculous 20-minute or like 10-minute YouTube videos I watched like reviewing strollers before I bought one.
yeah,
And I would like dive in. Like I didn't realize that I cared this much about strollers. And I'm watching like 10-minute videos about like how they fold and the suspension of the wheels. It was nuts. But I would rather watch that 10-minute video than watch a 2-minute video that's just like some pretty music where they like show the stroller. And I'm
yeah,
like, "Oh, what did I gain from that?" So like you actually have to put out really good content that other people in that space will want to watch and want to follow.
yeah,
So it's about, and then that's the way that you create a loyal following instead of just, I mean, brands can see right through if you have like a few thousand followers, but every post has like 10 likes, like it's about having not just followers, but a following, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Like
Yep,
people that
absolutely.
actually, yeah, they care about what you're putting out, it relates to them, and they want to engage with it because it speaks to them.
Authenticity comes in all forms, and I think there's such a lack
Yeah.
thereof on social media, especially now. And one of our roles here at Happy Brands is we manage influencers, and one of our influencers that we manage is Sasi Surasi. She's a local influencer in upstate New York, and she has about almost 26,000 followers, which is great. But you look at followers of accounts that have 500,000, a million, or like 100,000. And it's funny because we always look at her engagement and her engagement is so high and people trust her. She's a loyal, supporter of small business. And that's really what she promotes. And so we've been able to get some really great contracts because of that, because they know like she's not just gonna bullshit you. She's gonna
Exactly.
make sure she's gonna be out, she's authentic. She only works with brands and companies that she truly believes in and that she knows is something that she wants to promote. That's the number one thing she told me. She's like, if they're not a good company, I'm not going to promote them. Like they're
Mhm.
not, and a good company, be like they're not good to their employees or they're not good people in the community. Why would you promote someone like that? She always is looking at the bigger scale because she's like, my brand is tied to this. And then on the adverse side, you have the clients that come to us asking to work with her and in looking at her like like how is she to promote and be good for her business? And I'm like, because she gets thousands of views on every video, hundreds of comments, over 50 to 100 comments and likes on everything. Like everything is super, super high engagement, but it's because she's so authentic. And I'd rather her be at 26,000 than 100,000, knowing that we are so authentic and we slowly will grow. And I know she's going to get there just because of who she is. But I
Mhm.
think that's what I always tell anyone because I have people message me all the time. They're like, I want to do that, or I want to. I'm like, that's great. You just need to find your lane of like what you're interested in and what you have a passion about and create a channel and authentically discuss it. You can't just like, okay, what business am I gonna like, what brand am I gonna like try to get? Like, oh, I I don't know, like I've had people.
Exactly, because then the brands will come.
Yeah, like if you
It
were
may
someone
be.
who like you're like a makeup like maven, like you love doing makeup and like makeup tutorials and beauty, like do that then. Like do whatever's like authentic, not just something like, oh, I saw this girl do it and look at all the money she's making or the brand deals. Like that's because that's what she's been doing for 5 years between social media and YouTube and all these other channels.
I always say that for everybody who seems like they're an overnight success, it's been
Yeah.
like at least 5 to 10 years in the making.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there
It's
is no
always
overnight. I mean,
always.
like with TikTok, like it seems like people are just gaining followers very quickly, but it's always a long time in the making before they popped up on your radar. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like as long as if you're creating content that position there's one thing to create content that positions you. Like being authentic doesn't mean that you're not like measured or that you're not trying to like that you don't have
Yeah.
a plan. You can have a plan and be authentic, and you should, but your plan should make sure that what you're creating is actually good content if you're trying to monetize.
150%.
Sure.
I love that. Okay. So what I think we'll do for everyone listening is I will make sure in the show notes that we have all these amazing plugs and links that Kendall referenced in this episode. So I think there were so many little nuggets. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Kendall, but I don't want to take any more of your time. And I appreciate you so much for coming on. And I think giving everyone a different perspective on this podcast of what podcasting is and kind of the deeper kind of insight on that. That I just started back in October and here we are.
Yeah, no, I would just say that like for anyone who's even thinking about doing it, like just start. And I don't mean to just start by pressing record. I mean like just start getting yourself excited about it. Think about what you can be doing. Talk to somebody that you know that has a podcast. Like take that next step because I think that it's not just something that you're going to like enjoy and get a lot of joy out of, but I also think that it's actually really impactful, especially for businesses.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Kendall, for your time. And everyone tune in for this next episode. I will be on maternity leave by the time this comes out, but that's why we record. And thank you so much for listening today. You can catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as our YouTube channel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.